Hey there, winner. Good afternoon. Welcome, one, welcome all to the Win Win Live talk show and podcast this afternoon. And it's a pleasure to be gathered here again with you in this fashion. Today, we have a guest of ours that just causes me to just explode with excitement when I look at all that she would have created and the journey that she has been on and is still on. Today, on our Meet the Creator series, we have with us Dr. Dawn Mensch. And just before I invite her up to introduce her to you guys, I'm going to go ahead and share with you just a bit of her story about Dawn. Dr. Dawn Mensch has won over 80 international awards as the published author of the Queen Vernita's educational series and Dragon's Breath, including the Special Recognition Champion Award from Conquering Disabilities with Film, Best Written Word from Miraculous Makers Film, Hollywood Dream Film, and International Author Boss Award from Power Conversations magazine. Her published works also include the six federal individual education plan goals and the effectiveness of their implementation in preparing for transition. Dr. Dawn Menge has a PhD in education. She specializes in curriculum and instruction. She also holds a master's and credit a master's and a clear credential in moderate, severe disabilities and a bachelor's degree in human development. Dr. Dawn Mensch has been teaching students with severe cognitive delays for over 20 years and mentors and lectures graduate students. Dr. Dawn is the mother of three and the grandmother of six beautiful grandchildren. Please help me welcome here with us today, Dr. Dawn Mensch. Welcome, Dr. Dawn.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Wonderful. And Dr. Dawn Mensch is the creator of Queen Vernita, a character, I would say, the star character in her publications, as well as the Queen Vernita's educational series, The Dragon and Dragon's Breath. And we'll allow Dr. Dawn to share with us if there's anything that we're missing, any other things that she would have created by way of she being an author, authoring a number of children's book. Dr. Dawn, how are you
Okay.
doing today?
There's 15 published books in the series. I have several more that I'm working on. And each book is based on a real adventure that our family has gone on, and everyone in the book is a real person. And it started out with the first one, Queen Vernita's Visitors. And it actually was an assignment in my credentialing class. We had to write a math book and a math game. So I named it after my student, Queen Victoria's Visitors. And each person in the book was one of my students. And so we traveled around to the other schools, the primary schools, and did little skits. And then I would go back and explain my students' disabilities or the behaviors. And then when I decided to publish it, I named it after my grandmother. She was an astute businesswoman. Her and her father went door to door and started a credit union. And so she managed the credit union. She's a world traveler, and she taught us a lot. So I named it after her. And then everyone in the book is someone in my family. This one is my daughter. I have my nieces and my nephews. I have my father who passed away. This is my niece. And so it's based on calendar skills. There's 12 months in a year, and each month has a new friend, and they do 7 activities. So in this book, they do activities around the castle, and then they enjoy the queen. Well, when I first started, that's all I was doing, just publishing that. And then I went and started winning awards. I won first place in the EV Awards, which is out of Colorado in the United States, and getting interviews, and people are asking me, well, what's your next book? What are you going to do? And so it kind of brainstormed with my family, my friends. And since I love to travel, we decided to write books on traveling. So we now have 15 in the series, and I have several co-authors. But this would be an example. I went to New Orleans, and I wrote this one, and it has alligators and plantations. And we went into the bayou. This is a picture of us going into the bayou on a jet boat. There's about 6 of us in it. And it was thundering and lightning in the bayou. And we had to actually hide under a tree under the moss, waiting for the storm to pass. And then our guide, and this is our guide, drove up on us like a pile of moss. And he jumps out and he's got this fish in his hand. And he's making this really strange noise. And then all of a sudden you see these huge eyes coming up out of the water. And all of these alligators came up within like feet of him, and he's feeding them, and they're right there next to us. It was so fascinating. So then he opens up this ice chest and he hands me this baby alligator to hold. And so I'm just holding this baby alligator and I'm petting his stomach. And when I actually posted the picture, someone said, well, they bite. And I didn't even think about that because we were having so much fun. It was just so fascinating. So this book is on that. It has plantations. We talk about slavery, the Mardi Gras, jazz music. This one is a paddle boat trip I took up the Snake River, and it has jazz and old-fashioned cars and the scenery, and we do the flora and the fauna, all of the things that we saw. This is a famous falls that we went to. And my books are pre-K to 6th grade and above. So a child could actually grow up learning to read using my books. In fact, I have a teacher friend who works in Washington, and he teaches children, I'm sorry, they're adults, they're adults that have immigrants, have come over from Somalia, and there's some from Mexico. And so he teaches them English. He has a little classroom in a factory, and he teaches them English. And then he also teaches them how to work in the factory. And he actually uses my books with all of his students. And so they're learning to read using them, and their families are using them. Yes. And so that's just fast. I love getting emails from him about, how this, absolutely, when was a grandma was using it, and then the little girl was teaching him. But he had a student that was from Africa, and he learned how to read and count. And he mentioned this page. This is my daughter, Nicole, and it's Thanksgiving. And so he learned how to count by counting all the people at the dinner table. And the child, he's not a child, I'm sorry, he's an adult, said that reason that gravitated to the page was it reminded him of his family and his home. So it really touched him. And then he learned how to read, and he was teaching his 5-year-old daughter how to read using my books. And it's just heartwarming to know that you're impacting people who are coming to our country. My books are all over the world. I have a friend who was someone I worked with. She was our speech therapist, and she actually came from Africa. And so she took a set of my books, and her family were teachers there. So she took a set of my books and gave them to her family members. Yeah. And so I have pictures of the children reading in the classrooms, reading my books. Yes. And one little girl was reading my Alaska book. This one is on Alaska. Yeah. And she read it to her classmates in Africa on her birthday. And that is one of the most special videos that I have of anyone reading my books. I mean, I never imagined when I started this that they would be read all over the world. Yes. But this one has whales and seals and glaciers. And so it teaches you about all of that. Yes. And it's 3rd to 4th grade. Yes.
So, Dr. Dawn, even as you made that statement just now, that you never imagined that your books would be reaching all across the world when you started, it ties in with one of my first questions that I had to ask you is, and it's twofold. One, you did mention that you wrote the first one as a project. Did you, as you were writing that as a project, did you see this like morphing into the magnitude that it is and still growing?
I actually didn't even think about publishing it at the time. I was getting my credential,
Yeah.
and it was an assignment we had to do,
Yes.
and I turned it into a classroom lesson
Yes.
and lessons for the local children. But at
Yes.
that time, I didn't think about publishing it. Is when I got a divorce. I've been married for 27 years,
Yes.
and I was getting a divorce, and I was already a teacher, and my children were raised.
Yes.
So it's like, okay, what am I going to do next? Like, what am I going to focus on? I wanted to focus on something very positive. So I
Yes.
actually started my PhD
Yes.
and started publishing my books. And then it just kind of went from there. The first one was published in 2008.
Yes.
And my goal at that time was to publish one a year, just get one out a year, and just do that. And so I kind of got behind a little bit. And so during the pandemic, we taught at home. So
Yes.
I wasn't able to go to events, and I was traveling a lot, going to events.
Yes.
So I took that opportunity to publish 5 books. So I
Wow.
kind of caught up.
Wow.
And so those I've been and do a lot of interviews. I had a goal to do 100 interviews. So I think I'm on 89 now. So
Wow.
I did that. Yeah. So I wanted to get my word out, and I've done interviews all over the world,
Yes.
India, Jamaica, Australia,
Awesome.
um,
And
and
now
a
in
lot.
Canada?
Yeah, I've done several in Canada, so now I'm doing in
Okay.
Canada.
One more. Okay. Yep.
Yeah, and it matters who I'm talking to, what we actually talk about.
Yes.
Sometimes I'll get on and I'll think we're talking about the books, and I'll start talking about disabilities,
Yeah.
especially like in Australia and Jamaica. I've had a lot of questions about
Mm.
how we teach our disabled children
Yes.
versus how they're teaching them and what exactly we're
Yes.
doing. And then
Yes.
you mentioned my dissertation, which was the goals. We have their federal goals.
Yes.
There's now only 4. There were 6 when I did my paper.
Yes.
But so we really try to teach our children to be community based, to be able to socialize and
Yes.
to work if they can.
Yes.
And that's really what I do at work, is I try to teach them a lot of social skills. We do a lot of community activities. My students work in the community.
Yes.
And so the higher we can take them when they're in our class, when they go into programs, because we have programs based on their level is what they're able to do. They're
Yes.
able to do more for their life. And then that's their goal. Some of them can just work,
Yes.
have full-time jobs. Some of them can work in the center and do work for a little while, and they do a lot of social things. It just matters on the child. And so that's just kind of what I did. There are disabilities in some of my books, which most of them were my students or my friends' children.
Okay.
So I have autism, I have deaf, visual impairments, Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, all sorts of things. And that's how I was winning the awards for the Conquering Disabilities Film Festival.
Awesome. Awesome. Wow. Wow. And you shared earlier concerning the young man who learned how to read and to count. And just now, even as you're sharing, with the thrust and the vision, what I'd like to know, as you sit down to write, is how does it come forth? Yes, I know you shared that it's based on the experiences that you would have gone through, but as you're writing it with the intention to communicate education, to educate persons, what is that like as a creator of all these books, that you're putting it all together based on your experience? What can you educate and teach as it pertains to the academics part of things? Because you said he learned to read and he learned to count.
Yes.
Mhm.
My books touch different areas. If I go someplace, I might have an idea of what I want to write about, but of course, then you go there and you find out all sorts of new information. So I might just completely change what I'm going to write about. But it really depends on what level of book I'm writing. So this is when we went to the Grand Canyon. We took a train ride to the Grand Canyon, and then we went back, put our jammies on, and rode on the Polar Express. And it was all of our family. So this is all of our family that we were there. And so I wanted to write on the Grand Canyon, which would have been a higher learning book. But I decided to do the Polar Express and the train rides first. So that was pre-K to first grade. And this is actually my grandson. He fell asleep in Santa's lap. This is a picture of my granddaughter riding in the train. She's looking out the window. So because it's pre-K to first grade, it's very simplistic. It's rote learning. So it's the days of the weeks, the months of the years. And then this one talks about, I believe it talks about the trees and that she's seeing. But it's very basic information. This is actually my son and my daughter-in-law and my granddaughter, and they're reading on the train. Of course, they're reading a Queen Vernita book. So we talk about reading. And this is my cousin's daughter. And we were on the train, and it was snowing when we were there because we went in November. And so we talk about that. And then this is my grandson falling asleep in Santa's lap. So we talk a little bit about Santa Claus and the Queen and wrapping presents and sharing presents. So it depends on what level I'm writing on. So this one, my brother's an astronomer at JPL. And this, I think, was my third book. And so we wrote it together, and it's got astronomy. And so this is like 4th and 5th grade. So each page is a new planet. So it has more in-depth information about the solar system. And see, they're looking up at the stars, but you can see there's a lot more text. So it becomes more complicated to read. These aren't books you can really just sit down and like read to the class. They're longer to read. They take 15, 20 minutes to read. And there's a lot of information. So I always suggest to teachers to take like one page and work on one subject. Like this one is Alaska, and it has whales and glaciers. So if you were to be teaching that, you would take the one page and talk about glaciers. Read the page, talk about glaciers. Maybe the students could look them up. You could write a report about it. And then we have bears and the forests in Alaska. So there's lots and lots of information. This one, I do a lot of things with Story Monster magazine. It's an educational magazine out of Tempe, Arizona. I write book reviews for them. I judge their literary contests. And when they send me the books, I write the reviews, I read them to my students, and then I give them to my students. So everybody's benefiting from what I'm doing. And these have caverns and tide pools. Again, if you can see, there's a lot of text, a lot of information. And so you break it down when you're teaching your students, but a lot of the parents, when I do events in Arizona, they're coming to California because we're on the coast, and they're going to take a trip up the coastline. So they buy the books as kind of a guide for their children as they're going up the coastline. And so that's just wonderful for me. See, there's some tide pools. And they did that. I've had adults actually who did this with like my New Orleans book. They were going to go to New Orleans. So they bought the book and used it before they went there to gain some information. I think it was here. So it depends on where I'm at. We went to New England over the fall because I wanted to see the fall colors. And so this is actually the guide that was with us. And we went to a maple farm. So she's learning how to get the maple from the trees. And the illustrations come from actual pictures from our trip. So these are, there's either one picture or she incorporates several pictures. My illustrator is wonderful. And so we were teaching about that. This is a lighthouse we went to. And we actually had to walk on these huge stones. The lighthouse was a mile out. Wow. And we had to walk on these huge stones. So then we're going to talk about lighthouses. Awesome. And this is the fall colors. There was so many colors and so many leaves on the ground. We all just threw them up and then took pictures of them falling. And so this is the lady that was on our trip. So here we're going to talk about why the leaves change color, what's going on. Mm-hmm. So this one is going to be pre-K to first grade. So the information is going to be pretty simplistic, just kind of basic, getting them to want to read and want to explore. Yeah. This was a park we went to, and there was like a little waterfall, and this is one of the ladies that was in there. Mm-hmm. And so I decided to make the first one I was going to write pre-K to first grade, very simple. And then I'm going to do another one that's going to be 4th or 5th grade. So it'll have more in-depth information about what's going on, more history in it, things like that. So it depends on what I see when I'm there, and what I decide that I want to write about is how much information and what we're actually writing about.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And that's in depth. And I love the fact that you It's not like you are set on, okay, this is what I'm going to do, and that's it. You are open, flexible, and kind of like feeling after where you're at, what's taking place, and how you can use that to create something.
Because you go and you don't know, like there's animals there you didn't even know about. So
Yeah.
you want to write about them because if you
Yes.
didn't know about them, a lot of other people probably don't either, you
Yes.
know. And so that's what I tried to do. So
Awesome.
no, I'm never set, even when I'm starting to write it,
Yes.
I'm not set on what I'm going to write about, or maybe, oh, wait, we look something up and we find some new information and we're like, oh, let's add this, and then it goes
Mm.
from there.
Yes, yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. And then it comes out to a beautifully created finished book,
Yeah.
published, ready for
Yeah.
readers. Love it. So even as you shared and as I went ahead and prepared for this show, a question popped in my mind. And it's
Hmm.
kind of two-folded. Queen Vernita. So as you would have shared with me that she's named after your grandma, I thought to myself, what was the impact that Grandma Vernita made in your life? And second fold part of the question is, why her as the star main character within the book? Why
Well,
her?
she was the matriarch of our family,
Hmm.
matriarch of our family. So, and she was an astute businesswoman, and she was very strict, kind of with us, you know, and she was very much into education. So she very much encouraged us to do that, and so she was kind of like the head of all of us, and she was a
Yes,
world traveler. So
yes,
she's the one who got my mom traveling, and then my mom got me traveling. My dad loved the islands, so I love the islands. My parents had a sailboat
nice,
for
nice.
25 years, so we sailed and did a lot of things in the ocean. I just love the ocean,
Yes.
but the adventures are actually mine. And so
Mhm.
everything in it is things that I have done. She was my inspiration, kind of.
Yes.
She was the queen, the queen of our family. But
Yes.
all of the adventures are mine, and they're my family's adventures. And so um, that's just how it kind of developed.
Awesome. And what would you say was kind of like a couple of impact that she would have made in your life? So totally understand she was the matriarch and you kind of like decided, okay, I'm going to use Grandma Vernita as that main character within my book. As it pertains to the impact she made in your life, even as a young person coming up, what was that impact like that you believe even contribute to who you are today?
I think mostly it was the success that she had in her life. She showed us that you could build. I mean, they built a credit union from nothing. They went door to door and got donations and got members, and she was the manager of it, and she taught us how to strive and reach our goals, and definitely how to have pride in ourselves, and how to just if we have a goal, just to go for it, we can do it. I mean, she taught us how to work hard and how to be respectful of other people, and she was definitely, a person that everyone in the family looked up to.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. As you shared, Dr. Dawn, it sounds to me like, and from we started, it sounds to me like the publications of your all these different books that you would have authored, and some of them are co-authored. It sounds like it's kind of like a family thing. Like family is very much integrated within, through, above, beneath, around. Was that intentional or it just something that just you just walked into it? How did it come to be that way? Am I assuming correctly? Did I read correctly that it's a family thing? And if it was it intentional?
It wasn't intentional. I just added the children in the family because I thought, well, they're young, they're not gonna notice, and they're not gonna care. But we do a lot of traveling together as a family, and So especially since we started the pandemic, I have 3 grown children and 6 grandchildren, almost 7. And so actually my children are setting up the camping trips and our monthly trips. So we just went to Joshua Tree, which is here in local Southern California. And not going there, because we were going there for Easter to spend Easter together. It was not my thought that, oh, I'm going to write a book about Joshua Tree, because I actually have several going on right now. But as we were spending time there and we went to Joshua Tree and things were happening, I'm like, yes, I'm going to write a book. It's probably in 4th or 5th grade. And so I started taking pictures of what we were doing and finding the pictures that I want to use for the illustrations. And then that builds on what am I going to write about? What's going to be in the story? What are we doing that's going to be in the story? So we're just traveling. We're just spending time together. It's not really something that we discuss. I don't discuss it with my family. I don't say, do this or do that. It's, I let them know what I'm doing. And okay, my son-in-law, actually, I was taking pictures and they're taking pictures and I asked them for pictures and he told my daughter, she's going to write a book about this. And so we're all sitting at dinner and I happened to say something and my daughter says, he got it. You're going to write a book. And I'm like, yes, you guys know I will. But, they're very busy. They're all professionals and they're all going to college and they have children.
Yes.
And so once in a while I say, this is happening or that is happening.
Yes.
Because people ask me a lot. It's not really a discussion that we have. I mean, I don't go on talking about this is what I'm doing. Yeah. I'm just doing it. And I might be somewhere and just let them know, I'm here or there or doing this or doing that. Because they're busy with their own accomplishments. And my mom spends a lot of time. She's widowed and she spends more time traveling. We travel more together than we did before. Yes. And like we went to New England together. She co-authored this one with me because it was one of her dreams that she wanted to be an author.
Wow.
And she actually does a lot of, she reads my books and she edits them and she's very critical. Let me tell you. And actually when
in other words, he's a great editor.
Yeah. She's like, this isn't right, And actually when I was getting my credential and my kids were very little, my 2 little girls, I have 3 children, but that time I had 2. I was going to junior college and I would work in her classroom. She was a kindergarten teacher. Mm-hmm. And so I would volunteer in her classroom and get credit at the college for working there. And I worked really hard. And so she actually helped me get my credential, but she taught kindergarten and I teach special ed.
Okay.
So we went to Wyoming on a road trip a couple of summers ago, and it's taken us 2 years to get this book out, but she co-authored with me.
Wow.
We just actually got the copies like 2 weeks ago. This one's taken a long time, but it was based on a family that I grew up with, and they lived, like 2 blocks from me. That their parents were like my parents. My parents were like her parents. Mm-hmm. She was my best friend, and she passed away in her 30s. So this is her family, and so the book is based on her family. Okay. They moved to Wyoming, and the dad, during the pandemic, he wrote me on LinkedIn. And he said, when are we going to write our book? And I'm like, oh, okay. So after the pandemic was over, we finally got to go out there. And so they showed me around and what they do in Wyoming. Yes. And so we, this one is 5th and 6th grade. I'm trying to find an illustration here. And so she took us around. And so all of her family is in the book. And this is more in a chapter book. So it's got lots of information. Mm-hmm. They actually collect the moose antlers and they make things out of them and they sell them. So she taught us how they did that. And it's a beautiful country. So they do a lot of things there. So that one, this is my latest release.
Yes. Wonderful. Wonderful. And when you're at the table and one of your family members said, okay, she's going to write a book about this. So while you're going through and you're in these different events with the family, not that you started out with any intention to write a book, correct?
No. No intention.
But so while you're there and you're going through and is it in the moment? So, and that one on occasion, it was in the moment and you kind of like, I'm going to write a book about it. Whether it's in the moment or it comes to you after, what's the journey from when it comes to you? This looks like a book. This sounds like a book. This is a book. Okay. Mm-hmm. So what's the journey like from there when you like decide, okay, yes, this is a book, to going through the process and actually having the book in your hand published?
Well, First, we walked to Skull Rock, which actually did look like a skull.
Yeah.
So I took pictures of Skull Rock, took pictures of my family there, us going there, and we went on a nature trail. So I took pictures of all of the things that were on there, the plants, the animals they talked about. So
Yes.
then I'll be able to develop the flora, the fauna, the geographical information. And so, we're not changing anything we're doing because
Yes.
I want to buy the book.
Ah,
Sometimes I'll say, well, could you
yes.
just stand there for a second so I can get your picture? Because the illustrations are actually based on what we're doing.
Yes.
So, I might do that. And if you go on my Facebook, it's Dawn Menge 1, you'll
Yes.
see there's a album for each one of the books. And you'll see our actual pictures of what we did on the trip and where the illustrations came from. Because one of my goals is I really want people to travel. And you don't have to have a lot of money to travel. Like I said, we're camping. And I actually did an interview from St. Louis a couple of years ago. And the man said he'd been talking to his friend. And she actually was checking my books out at the library. I didn't know they were in the library in St. Louis, but she's been checking them out, reading them to her son. And then she got another job because she wanted to take her son traveling because of my books. And it's like, I would not have known that if I had not been doing that interview. Like, I would have no idea. And that's something I tell everybody when I do these is authors don't know unless you write a review or you actually contact them personally. They don't know. They don't know who's reading their books.
Yeah.
They don't know what people think of them or what they might need to change. So you need to tell people, I loved your book, or, well, I didn't really like that part. Sometimes you have to say that. But so then the process is I decide what it is I want to write about. So I need 13 pictures. So I start putting the pictures together, sending them to my illustrator.
Mm-hmm.
She creates them. And then when I get all of the illustrations, then I can write the text. And then after the text, sometimes it takes me 2 weeks to write it. It matters if I know exactly what I want to do.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes it takes a year if it's not something I'm really into, or so other things have come up and I kind of gone this way and I'm trying to go back, and it's like, I'm not interested in this anymore. It's a little harder, But the one thing for Joshua Tree is I only have one book on the desert. So I thought, I need to do this. This one came out last year. I wrote it with a friend of mine that I've known since I was 16. And he used to live in Tucson. So I would go there and visit him and go to the Tucson, Arizona Book Festival. And he's got me a room at a beautiful bed and breakfast there. So I always recommend everybody go there. Okay. So this book took us 10 years to write. We started it when I was going to the festivals, and then we both got really busy, and he moved to Minnesota, and I had to finish my PhD and everything. So over the pandemic, we said, we are going to finish this.
Okay.
Good. And we did, but it took 10 years. And actually this picture was a picture that the woman who owns the bed and breakfast, and she's one of the main characters in here, took right outside of her house. It's just a beautiful place.
Wow.
So this one is all about the desert. It's 6th grade and above. So I have a thing for the ocean. I love the ocean. I love Hawaii. I love all of that. And I have a friend that I grew up with who moved to Kona. His wife grew up in Kona. So I've probably been there 7 times. When I was getting divorced, I'd fly out like every 6 months and just stay with them. And so I actually have 2 books based on Kona. And this is the first one. And his wife are the Enchantress and Fisherman Jeff. And I went swimming with the manta rays. So that's in the book. And the seahorses. They have a seahorse. It's not called a farm, but they grow the seahorses, and you have to take a class, and you can actually get a baby seahorse and raise it. So they teach you about that at this place.
As a pet.
Yeah. It's in Kona, Hawaii. So if anybody wants to look that up, you can actually do that, but you have to take a course to learn how to do it.
Interesting.
So I do a lot of things for the ocean. So I wanted to start doing different things. So I wanted to do the desert.
Yes.
And I'm doing
did you say earlier that you were swimming with the rays? Is that the stinging rays?
No. I went to Tahiti.
Okay.
And we went swimming with they were giant manta rays, not the stinging rays. No.
Okay. Because they're like,
but they were giant. They would come right up to you. And we fed them. We were out in Tahiti. The coral reef goes out about a mile. So we were inside the coral reef, and we were actually doing that. My son was 16 at the time.
Yes.
And so we went on this tour to swim with the manta rays. And the guide says, come here, to me and my son. So we kind of went over here, and it got a lot deeper. And there were sharks out there. There was probably about 15 sharks. And again, it's fascinating when you're out there. It's like, wow, they're in there. They're just swimming around with you. And they said, well, don't worry about it. They've got plenty of food. They're not interested in you. But, people ask about it, but you're so fascinated
Yes,
while
yes,
you're in the process of it.
yes, yes.
That's how people end
That
up
fear,
falling off.
that there's no room for fear at that time.
Right. Well, that's how people fall off cliffs and stuff
Yeah,
because they're just like, wow, this is amazing.
yeah.
And so we did that. And so that the manta ray was not a singing manta ray.
Awesome,
So,
awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Now, as I hear you share your story, and thank you for sharing how the
mhm.
process is. I note that you said when you just want to get 13 pictures. Is that a thing like you need to have at least 13 for each book? How did you come by that number?
Yeah, because it's based on calendar skills. So it's based on the 12 months of the year. And then I'll have like an intro page. So I
Yes,
need at least 13 pictures and
yes,
then one for the cover, however I decide to do the cover. Like
yes.
this cover was actually also the man whose family I that wrote the book. He took this picture. So this was his
Awesome, awesome,
essentially.
awesome.
So it just depends. But yeah, but as they're getting higher, the grading reading levels are getting higher. I don't follow the same format. They're more of a flowing story.
Yes,
They're all like, so this month we're doing this, and then the next month they visited somebody new, and this person's doing this, and this person is teaching us, the queen and her friends,
yes.
whatever he's doing in his life. So you learn lots of different information about that area, and each person in each month is an expert on whatever it is that they're teaching the queen.
Awesome. I have two questions to ask Dr. Dawn. One, what is your big vision concerning all these books that you have already authored, created, and what is to come after? What is your big vision? Some persons say your big, hairy, audacious goal. What does that look like for you?
Well, it's changed over the years. My experiences as being an author.
Yes.
At first when I started, I just wanted to publish the book. That was it. I didn't know about marketing or doing events or anything. And I had a hard time, like even speaking. So the first couple of interviews I did in 2008, I had my friends come with me and they talked about the book because I didn't even want to talk about it. So
Seriously?
that's, yeah, that's one reason I started doing the podcast more. You
Yes.
know, my goal was to make myself be more outgoing and
Yes.
to talk more about it because it's kind of hard. The world's a big place,
Yes, it
and
is.
so that's one goal that I have had is to try to learn how to expand myself.
Mhm.
And so being an author, I joined a lot of the professional organizations like SCBWI, which is worldwide. I joined United States Board on Books for Young Children. I'm their ambassador for California. I've
Yes.
been on several other committees picking books for the disabled, picking award-winning books. Now I'm on a committee picking Alma Award winners out of Sweden, I believe it is.
Awesome.
And so I'm working with some of the people from the Literary Guild and things like that. So it's really expanded. I'm doing judging book awards and writing book reviews and marketing other authors. And so it's expanded. So it's getting to now where I'm thinking, and I think it would make a great like children's television series, but
Mm.
all that, but
Yeah. Yeah.
they always want all that, and so as my experiences grow as an author, my thoughts on, where can we take this also grow.
Mm. Nice.
So, I'm very flexible. My path is not written in stone at all. So it's going to take me wherever I go. Like a
Yes.
few weeks ago, I wanted to go back and start doing crafting and stuff and relax. And I saw this craft on Facebook. I'm like,
Mm.
oh, that's beautiful. So we went, I took my mom and we made this beautiful Easter wreath. And
Yes.
so, of course, to start talking about I'm an author and stuff. And so we're going to go back on Sunday and we're going to paint a door hanger and it says, be happy. And she wants to do events with my books in her shop. So
Wow.
I'm going to go take my books. And she said she can cut out things that look just like the characters. So for
Wow.
Dragon's, we'll probably do a dragon or something, and I'll read the story. All the children will get the story, and
Yes.
then they'll do whatever it is she has set. So she wants
Yes.
to do, eventually she wants to do every book. So like during the summer, we're going to do a camp. She said it's like a crafting camp.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to drive down there and do that with them. And so you meet people, and,
Absolutely.
and then something new. I was actually doing an IEP the other day, and the director of special ed was on there. So she ended up coming to my classroom, and I started talking. And I have a big poster behind that I got at an author event behind me that has my books and things.
Yes.
And so we started talking about my books, and she's like, "Oh, I really like that." She goes, "I really want to start literacy in our district, really start pushing literacy."
Yes.
And so she's like, "Okay, I'm going to go think about it. I'm going to get some of your books, and we're going to figure out how you can start teaching our district children about literacy and things." So a lot of it comes from the connections you have, the people you're
Yes.
talking to.
Yes.
You never know.
Yes.
Like when I'm going to Italy, I did an interview for a wonderful lady who actually lived in Jamaica at the time. She had a radio show.
Hey.
Yeah. So a couple of years ago, I did the interview. She's called her name's Lady Tracy.
Yes.
And then actually I was at the book festival in Las Vegas, and I did a workshop. I had forgotten about that. I did a workshop for the high school students there on writing. And so now she moved to Italy and she got married, and she's doing her first author event. And I'm like, oh, I want to go there. So it's my mom and I are going this summer in July. And
Awesome.
so I'm going to do a workshop for her and talk about storytelling and how we come about storytelling. And so opportunities come up. And
Yes. Yes.
I watched a speech one time for Kwame Alexander. He's a really famous author here for children. And he
Yes.
said, say yes. So you say yes,
Mm.
and then your yes will you'll meet more people, and then those will bring more opportunities.
Yes.
Then you'll also see what you don't want to do. Sometimes we do things and we think, oh, I don't want to do that again.
That's, that's true.
But you need to know that.
Yes. 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 It's all a part of the learning process. Thank you
Right.
so much, Dr. Dawn, for answering that. And even as you shared, how when you went to the craft that you were sharing about, who you are and what you do as an author, it brought back memories in traveling with my mom. Dr. Dawn, everywhere my mom goes, she converse with people,
Mm-hmm.
talks with people. And so as you shared, that is like, that's it right there.
Yeah.
You connected. You just started talking. Don't know them from Adam, sitting on the bus, sitting on the plane. Sometimes when she travels, she'd come back and she'd be saying, I met this person on the plane, and she was just talking. But
Right.
as I listened to you, and as you touched on you said the director that came
Yeah.
in.
Director of special ed. Yeah. She was
Yeah,
in our meeting.
yeah. So as you were speaking on that, I was like, I guess you got a glimpse of my next question, because my
Oh,
next question, which is and was going to be and is that, do you have any plans, or is it a part of a hidden desire to have your books within the curriculum, not only in the US but across the globe, where
oh,
because
that would be wonderful. Yes.
yeah.
Especially across the globe, because of the repetition,
Mhm.
which some people don't like because they're looking for like a storyline, but the
Yes.
repetition is what is teaching, like
Yes.
the immigrants or people who are trying to learn English as their second language.
Yes.
It helps to teach them the rote learning. So
Yes.
they're wonderful books for other countries, for
Yes.
their children. So
Yes.
yeah, in fact, I started something new. I have to find it. So I now have my own brand. It's called The Land of Quails. And now I'm completely self-published again, even though I have a publisher who's publicizing me. And he's going to start distributing to like mass distributors like schools and libraries and things like that.
Awesome.
And so, yeah, that would be like a major goal for me. Yes, I would love to do that.
Yeah.
Um,
That is one of the things I see as you're sharing, as you pull for each and pull for each. I'm like, that's something good to have in our curriculum, and that's
mhm.
something good to have in our curriculum, and that, because it's adventurous, but
Mhm.
educational at the same time.
Right. They don't realize they're learning.
Yes, that's it. That's
No,
it
I'm
right
trying
there.
to, and also like with the disabilities I have in there, we talk about a little bit about the disability, just kind of explaining it a little bit, but a lot of it is this child is living their life,
Mm,
and they might need a little bit of help with something, but they're
yes.
living their life. They're learning about astronomy, they're learning about volcanoes, you know, and I have an autistic, he was actually my student, and I have him in my Conquering the Volcanic Islands, and him and his dad are at the Volcanic National Park learning about volcanoes, but he has a communication device. So the queen is trying to learn how to use this communication device to talk to him. So we
Mm,
talk about it, a little bit about his communication device, and he's
yes.
explaining to her,
Yes.
what it is. So
Yes.
when the children are reading that, they're learning about sharks and volcanoes, and I don't even know what else I have in there. But all of that, they're just learning that, and all of a sudden, oh, here's Connor. Connor's autistic. He's at the Volcanic National Park,
Mhm.
and oh, so he has this communication device. So if someone sees a child on campus with a communication device,
Yes.
they don't think he's listening to games or radio.
Mhm.
Oh, he needs it to communicate. And
Wow.
so it's less threatening for them,
Yes.
and they know what it's for, because a lot of people, they don't want to ask
Yes. Yes.
someone who has
Yes.
a disability, what do you need? What do
Yes.
you need from me to be with you or to communicate with you or
Yes.
whatever it is? So it just kind of helps. And they don't know they're learning.
Yes. 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 Because even as you shared it just now, I learned something. Because when you kept on saying communication device, I'm thinking communication. That means it was a phone. So that's
Yeah.
what I was thinking. But then as you
They-
continued
yeah.
on, I learned. Yeah.
Well, they are. They're apps. They're apps that talk. They have like
Yes.
pictures. They press on it and it says the item. So the
Yes.
higher learning students can write actual sentences. I want to do this, or I need
Yes.
this.
Yes.
And the lower functioning students, it's a picture of a glass of water or
Okay.
recess. So they press on this and it's
Yes.
recess,
Yes.
restroom, or
Yes.
whatever. So they're able to talk to whomever it is they're around.
Yes.
And they have the apps. They have the apps on their phones.
Yes.
They have them on iPads.
Yes.
They actually use, sometimes they start with cards where sometimes they're just a picture of an item, or people take actual pictures of
Yes.
people or places. And the child uses this to communicate. This is what I want. This is so
Yes.
that there's less frustration, less behaviors.
Yes. 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 That is powerful that you put that in and factor that in the book. And one of the things that comes to mind is based on background within the Caribbean, persons with disabilities, autism, you think that it's like they don't have a mind to think of themselves. And as you're sharing, what I'm hearing is they actually think.
Oh,
They
yes.
they have they make decisions inside, but is to articulate that for us.
Yeah. They're
And so
not
this
able
really,
to speak. They're not able to formulate it.
yeah,
So they
yeah,
have a device. And Connor was basically nonverbal, but he could tell us complete sentences on his iPad. So he was taught really well how to use it. One time he was in class and he was sick.
mhm,
And so he said, I want you to take me to Walgreens and buy me medicine. And we're just like, yeah, that's what we did. Wow. And, then we had to explain to them that we couldn't do that. you know,
yeah,
we can't go and buy you medicine. We'll tell your dad. But he
yeah,
was able to tell us what he needed and
yeah.
where we were going to get it. And,
Wow.
so he really needed people to understand
Yeah.
that he could really talk through
Yes.
this device.
Yes.
And yes, they think, they process, they want to learn, they have their curiosity, all of
Yes.
that.
Yes. Wow. Dr. Dawn, thank you so much for saying yes to this, for leaning in. It started just by you completing your course by writing this because it was a project. But look
Mhm.
how it has grown and is continuing to grow. But I really believe and I do hope and pray along with you that the doors will open for it to be a part of the curriculum, the teaching curriculum, not just in the United States, but across this globe. And so I want to ask you a pop question. If you were to write a book about one or two of our world leaders, who would you choose? Who would you want to
Oh my
meet?
gosh.
Who Which is that world leader that you would want to meet, and based on your experience with him or her, and even as you shared your story with them, what book would you like to write about them, or yeah, based on that experience, and why?
World
Why
leaders.
would you like to? Yes.
Um, well, I think I would start with our former president, President Obama.
Okay.
They were I actually went to a library event where we were signing the Declaration of Literacy, I believe it was, and it was everybody. There was a big thing that was going through the United States to
Yeah.
promote literacy,
Yes.
and they were very into literacy, and I would love to discuss that with them and our
Yes.
children.
Yeah.
How our children are learning and
Yeah.
how much they've impacted the literacy movement.
Wow.
Um, and so I guess based on literacy, I would still go back to our own presidents, because this is
Yes.
where we are, where I am.
Yes. Yes.
I know that President Bush also was high in literacy. I
Okay.
have an illustrator friend who I work with, and he's a cartoonist, and he actually did an initiative with Barbara Bush
Wow.
across the country using literacy and some very famous cartoonists spreading it's the arts and literacy,
Yes.
and so he was spreading that across the country, and he's actually painted murals all over the world
Yes.
promoting literacy and the arts. And so I think those would be the two things and the initiatives that they created to bring the arts and literacy together, to bring literacy to our children. I'm on the board of Hindi's Libraries, which is a nonprofit that distributes books, new and gently used books across
Yes.
the world, actually.
Yes. Yes.
And they have some of the facts, and it's like only 20% of the children in the United States have books in their home.
What did
And
you
that
say?
was shocking to me. Yeah, it's a very low number. I don't know if it's exactly 20%. It was a very low number. And I was shocked. I'm like, in the United States, there's books everywhere. There's libraries. But
Yes.
no, there are many, many children that don't have books at home. So right now, doing Hindi's Libraries, I'm doing a promotion we have Southern California reading, and so we have RIF. So I'm doing an initiative with RIF.
Mm-hmm.
So we're having one of the books. They're on the East Coast. I'm on the West Coast. So they're following one of the books from Hindi's Libraries to the Southern California RIF. They're like videotaping this.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're going to have a teacher and a student come to where they have the books, pick out the book,
Yes.
and then they're going to follow the book to the home, to the school. And the journey of this book is called The East Coast Meets the West Coast.
Wow.
And so we're finishing that up. We did it for, we have a reading initiative in March.
Yeah.
And then also we're collaborating with Southern California RIF and county schools, which we have the biggest county in the United States.
Yes.
We have a reading rally in October, and
Yeah.
about 2,000 children come to that, and I read at it.
Mm.
And I connected everybody together. And so
Yes.
in October, when we do it, they're going to donate the books and the authors for this event, and it's going to be pretty big. So, getting literacy out there.
Yes.
It's surprising how many children don't have access to it.
Absolutely. That was surprising when you shared it just now.
Yeah.
It certainly was. Wow. For Dr. Dawn Menge, what can we look forward to? What is coming next? You would have shared just now from the East Coast meet the West Coast, was it? Yes.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that we can look forward to coming forth soon? And how can persons get in touch with you?
I have my book on New England coming out probably by the fall.
Yeah.
I have one on Death Valley. My co-author for the Tucson book, his grandmother went 100 years ago to Death Valley, went on a trip. So she has a diary. So then I went to Death Valley. So we're mirroring the trips 100 years apart. It's going to be
Wow.
a really neat book. So that's one I hope does not take us 10 years to write.
Yes,
That's so hard now.
Yeah.
But so I have some books coming out. I'll have one on Joshua Tree.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to Italy to do the book event.
Yes.
And I have the things with Southern California RIF and Hindi's Libraries in the fall. And I'll still be teaching. I'll still be teaching my students and probably lecturing at the college next fall. So I don't know anything else.
Awesome. And again, I want to really thank you for showing up, for being here present with us today, for sharing your story, your journey as a creator, as an author. And as we are bringing the curtains down, I'd love for you to share, Dr. Dawn, to persons who maybe the fear or whatever sort of limiting beliefs, whatever restrictions that either they placed on themselves or others placed on them, but they know like there is something within me, like I need to do this, I need to do this, but just keep feeling felt. What can word can you leave with them, share with them today to like take the bull by the horn and just go for it or take
It
a baby
is.
step?
It's scary. It's scary because you're putting yourself out there, and the world isn't always very nice.
Yeah.
You
True.
know, and it's hard. But my advice is to join writing workshops.
Mm,
You know, contact other authors because they're in the same place you are. You know,
yes.
the SCBWI, I go to their events in Los Angeles, and you have authors who are, they call them pre-published. So they might have had a manuscript for 10 years and still have not gotten the
Yeah.
gotten the courage to publish it, to
Yes.
people that are traditionally published,
Yeah.
self-publishers, people that
Yes.
have won Caldecott Awards, and they have famous authors talking, but everyone treats you just remarkable. I
Yes.
mean, I was sitting there having lunch, and this lady walks in, and she sits down and she starts talking. And I looked, we all have a name tag. So when they
Mm,
ask who you are, you show them their name tag instead of telling your name. I don't know why. But she
okay.
actually was the daughter of a famous author that we have here. And I kept going, no. And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, no. She was the neatest lady, neatest lady. She had written some books.
Yes.
And some of the ladies at the table, they didn't know who he was. And I'm like, how could you not know that? But but she was the neatest lady, and she was just
Yeah.
talking to us. And so you meet people, and you
Yes.
have to get out there and join the groups, join some professional organizations, go to their
Yes.
conferences. Um, Everybody's pretty encouraging, and they tell you what to do and what not to do, what works, what
Yeah.
doesn't work, and
Yes.
then they'll tell you, but do whatever you want to do. I always think that's the funniest thing. They give you all the rules,
Yes.
and then they say, just go do it, just
Yeah.
whatever, just do it. You know, and you're like, okay. But
Yeah.
I didn't tell you where to contact me. I have a Facebook, Dawn Menge One. I have an Instagram, Dawn Menge. Twitter, Queen Vernita.
Mhm.
Some of my links are on Rushmore Press,
Mhm.
and I have a website that's in process. It's queenvernita.net.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. Dr. Dawn, it was a pleasure having you here today and for you sharing with us your story, your journey, your creations. Thank you so much for being a part of Meet the Creator series, one of our guests, as well as Meet the Author series. So it's two and one.
Oh, good.
We are launching Meet the Author series. I would like to thank you for saying yes to walking this journey of just causing what is within to come out and come forth. Indeed, it's well known, one of our leaders, world known leaders, Dr. Miles Monroe, as he would have walked the path here on earth, one of his saying was, the graveyard, the cemetery, is one of the wealthiest places on the earth. Many books that should have been written were
Yeah.
never written. Many businesses, organizations, schools, whatever it is that should have never happened. So
Yes.
thank you so much for making it happen. And as you do that, you are sharing with the world that which they can use and make their lives so much richer, so much more valuable. And so I thank you. Thank you for saying yes.
Well, thank
Folks,
you for having me.
yes, it's my pleasure. Please go ahead and like, subscribe, follow, and share this with others. Remember, just as you would hear Dr. Danita share on her journey as a creator, you are a creator, as you were created in the image and likeness of God, and her story as an author. We all are authors, I like to say, because from we started writing, we became an author. Published author, we may not have all have that title, but you are an author. Right, and come pull forth that creator out of you. We say thanks again to Dr. Dawn and the communications that you would have heard her mention in terms of how to reach her. It'll be somewhere around this video, either at the top or the bottom, where you can go ahead and reach out to her and connect and make it happen. Have a wonderful rest of the afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. It's our pleasure. Bye now.